بازم دارک به سلام بچه‌ها، خوش اومدین به این ویدیو. من فزی ام و امروز دوباره اومدم پیش شما تا یه ویدیو خیلی ترسناک دیگه با هم دیگه ببینیم و میدونم که الان هولوش 1 الی 2 هفته است که هر روز خدا داریم با ویدیوی من عشق میکنین، کلی حال میکنین و امشب هم یکی از اون شباییه که قرار بازم ویدیوی منو ببینیم. و همینطور که میبینید عینک جدید خریدم. اگه خوشگله تو کامنت ها بنویسید و حتما قبل از اینکه بریم سراغ اصل داستان و ویدیو رو با هم دیگه ببینیم این ویدیو رو لایک کنید، کانال رو سابسکرایب کنید و کامنت بذارید. و اینم به بچه‌ای که تازه وارد جمعمون شدن اینو بگم که کلی ویدیوهای دیگه من از قبل ضبط کردم که میتونید برید توی کانال ببینید. کلی ویدیو راجع به هر موضوع ترسناکی که فکرشو بکنید ما اینجا ویدیو داریم. پس قراره کاملا بهت خوش بگذره اینجا. و خلاصه ازت تشکر میکنم که به این همه تامنیل روی تامنیل من کلیک کردی. بریم سراغ ویدیو.
I've spent the past 5 years of my life shut off from the outside world in my tiny studio apartment. Other people might find it claustrophobic, but I find it comforting. This apartment is my world, and it's small enough that I know everything that goes on in it at any given moment. Here, I know that I'm safe and protected from the chaotic world outside the window that I always keep closed and curtained. I wasn't always like this though. I used to be a normal kid with a loving family. Back then, I lived in a fairly large house with my parents and older brother. I don't remember my parents very well. I know they loved my older brother and I, but they were always too busy with work to actually spend much time with us. My brother, on the other hand, I can remember perfectly. He was a lot older than me, and more often than not, had to be the one to take care of me when my parents worked late into the night. I've eaten his cooking more times than my mom's. He never seemed to mind taking care of me though. Sometimes I wonder how much of that was a facade. A teenager like him must have felt frustrated having to take care of his kid brother all the time. Thankfully, he was kind enough to never blame me for it. Not overtly anyways. In return, I tried my best to not bother him or my parents as much as possible. I was a shy, quiet kid, even back then anyways. I kept to myself both at school and at home, locking myself in my room until it was my time to eat, and only coming out when asked to. In my mind, I was trying my best to not be a bother to anyone. Looking back, I think I might have come off as cold or uncaring to my family. Maybe if I tried to talk to them more, things would have gone differently. One night, I woke up to the sound of my door handle rattling. I'd made it a habit to lock my doors early, one out of shyness, and that most likely saved my life. I got out of bed to open the door, thinking that my brother needed something from me. But when I heard the person from the other side bang loudly on the door, I froze in my tracks. My brother was a calm, patient person. He never once raised his voice at me. It wasn't like him to bang on my door like that in the middle of the night. The person on the other side continued to bang on the door, getting louder and louder with every passing second, until I was afraid that it might break. All I could do was curl up in my bed under my blanket. At some point, I fell asleep and woke up the next morning drenched in my own sweat. I tried to convince myself that it was just a dream. Almost succeeded too. But then I opened the door and stepped into my living room. What I saw there would haunt me for the rest of my life, even though I wasn't able to remember most of it. My court-appointed therapist tells me it's my mind repressing stressful memories that I wasn't mentally equipped enough to process yet. I can still recall some of those things though. I remember the blood flowing down the wooden floorboards, the metallic smell in the air that reached into the back of my throat to make me gag, the red and blue glare of the police lights as they pulled up to the side of the house to respond to what they thought was a noise complaint. Those bits managed to sneak past the cracks of my psyche. Now, they're pretty much the only thing I can remember about that old life. The repressed memories had extended to memories of my family in general. By the time I was released from the foster system and found my own apartment, I barely remembered anything about my family. Hell, I couldn't even remember my parents' faces at that point anymore. I became a shut-in, living cheaply off money I made doing freelance tech jobs online. Then, one day, I looked in the mirror and saw, for the first time, just how sad and pathetic I'd gotten. Or rather, remained. 18 years old, and I was still the same scared little brat who hid under his blankets all those years. I thought that enough was enough, and that I would overcome my fear. The therapist who I've been talking to online told me that some gradual exposure therapy could help me overcome my fears. She was talking about my fears of the outside world then. Once I felt I was ready, she intended to take me for a walk outside to get used to the environment. But for once in my life, I wanted to do more that was required of me. I was impatient after years of being trapped by my own mind, and wanted to take action while I still felt the determination to do so. That was the biggest mistake of my life. Instead of gradually exposing myself to the outside world to get used to it, I decided to confront my fear of death firsthand. And the only way to do that was to witness it. I logged on to the deep web using a Tor browser and over a dozen security features. I may be a shut-in, but I was also a freelance techie with more than one working brain cell. If I was really going to explore the deep web, I wasn't going to take any risks. I went to several gore sites to see people after accidents or natural disasters. A soldier with his leg torn apart by an explosion, its bits scattered on the dirt around him. The sight of a car crash where the driver had been crushed in their seat, with their entrails spilling out of their eviscerated belly. And a person who'd been struck by lightning that fired their skin into a blackish blue hue with dark bulging veins beneath them. Some of the people in the pictures I couldn't even tell whether they were dead or alive. It might have been more merciful had they been dead. I wanted to close the browser so many times while browsing that site, but even as the tears filled my eyes alongside memories that I've been trying to forget, I kept clicking on links and looking at the terrible photos that popped up without averting my gaze. I was determined to let myself not be scared by stuff like that anymore. It seemed like I was doing well. I hadn't curled up on the bed in a panic attack yet, at least. But then I clicked one link titled Family Night Gone Wrong. I wasn't sure what I was expecting it to be about, but I thought it'd just be another gruesome photo. Instead, it redirected me to a video. I knew it couldn't be a live feed though. I had security programs that would block any attempts to sync my computer to another device. I might be a half-mad shut-in, but I'm not an idiot. The video showed the dimly lit living room of a house, tied and propped up in a sitting position on the couch, were a middle-aged man and a woman with duct tape over their mouths. They were both sobbing through their closed mouths, but I could also hear another, younger voice sobbing with them from somewhere off camera. Two men in black ski masks walked into the frame, and each stood behind the man and woman. They both gently rested a hand on the man and woman's shoulder, like they were giving them a reassuring pat after a rough day at work. The effect they had was anything but comforting though. The man and woman started hyperventilating. The sobbing of the younger voice off screen grew louder. Then, without warning, the masked men's resting hands tightened into a vice-like grip that made the man and woman visibly tense up in pain. The masked men pulled out switchblades from behind their backs, and in one swift motion, slit the throats of the man and woman at the same time. A muffled scream came from off-screen as the man and woman bled to death, unable to make any sound but the faint involuntary wheezing of air squeezing out of their open throat. But that's not what broke me. What made me close the browser was that I saw when the camera panned off of the couch and focused on a teenage boy tied to a living room chair. I recognized that boy. He was my brother. That living room was my living room.
توی خونه خودش همون شبیه که داشتم در می‌زدم دقیقاً همچین اتفاقاتی داشت
instantly became more familiar to me. They were my parents, and I was watching a recording of what happened in my house the night my life changed forever. I immediately called the police. The new evidence helped reignite the unsolved case of my family's murder. It's the only good thing that came out of my dark web trip. I've given up trying to overcome my fears of the outside world. At least, for now. But maybe, just maybe, if the police can catch the men responsible for my family's murder, I'll be able to muster up the courage to go outside again.
چه داستانی بود.